one person who's thought a lot about how machines have changed the human world is this man, Gary Kasparov. Some of you know Gary Kasparov or have heard of him, but he was the greatest chess champion potentially of all time, certainly of the late 20th century. And he first, in a very publicized match, beat an IBM supercomputer named Deep Blue, and then a couple of years later in a rematch was defeated by this Deep Blue computer. And so Kasparov thought a lot about, what does it mean? What does the rise of intelligent computers mean to humanity? Because for many people, chess is one of those games that's not just a game. It's a game that you can't, there's an infinite, almost infinite number of moves, and you can't just, it's not just the computer can just predict what's going to happen. There's always the question what the other person's going to do. The computer, it would seem, almost has to think to win. And Kasparov asks, what does it mean that we now have computers that can outthink the very best, the smartest, most creative, most brilliant chess player that humanity has ever created? And his answer is that there are three main changes, there are three main lessons that we can take from the rise of supercomputing chess machines. The first is, he says, that when he grew up, and in the tradition of chess, a good chess move was often bold or risky or something new. And it was also supposed to be beautiful. You weren't just supposed to repeat the same thing over and over again. It wasn't just about winning, it was about winning with a kind of panache or style. And he says that in the age of computer chess, that goes out the window because, you might gain some element of surprise against a human when you try a new bold move. But within about half a second or even less, the computer will have immediately played 4,000 new games with that new move and figured out all the potential things that you might have in mind. And so there's very little advantage to being surprising or new. And so chess becomes a more predictable and regular game. The second change is that it used to be, he says, that people who were a little older had a big advantage in chess because it took time to learn all the different variations and the experience to learn what one needed to learn in playing chess. Whereas, and one can see this in that Bobby Fischer in 1958 became the youngest grandmaster ever at the age of 15. Some of you probably know this. But that record lasted until 1991, right? That's 33 years if my math is correct. Since 1991, it's been broken more than 22 times. The current record holder today is a Ukrainian Sergei Karjakin, who claimed the title at the age of 12 in 2002. And what Kasparov says is this isn't an accident. As computers become better and better at chess, younger and younger people can play the best games in the world over and over again with computers and learn from them. And so you can learn with the computer at a much earlier age. You don't need the time, the years to become as experienced as you used to. And so computers, he says, first, militate against boldness and surprising moves. Second, reduce the age at which people will be able to become masters. Younger people are ever more able to become the best. The advantage of age, wisdom, he said, with age, is diminished. And the third element that he talks about is the neutralization of genius. It used to be that someone like Gary Kasparov or Bobby Fischer had a certain advantage in that they were geniuses. And as geniuses, they could, in their head, see 20, 30 moves in advance, or I don't know how many they see, a lot of moves in advance, and they could imagine the board all over the place. But now, if you're a pretty good chess player and you understand it, if you have a computer helping you, or an iPhone in your pocket with a very powerful computer in it, you can, in a sense, neutralize that advantage. And so, Kasparov tells the story of playing a man named Veselin Topalov, who at one point had been a world champion, but Kasparov had regularly beaten him. And at one point, when Kasparov was retired, he played Toporov, and he beat him 3-1 in chess. But then they played a different kind of game. They played a game in which both of them could use a computer to help them. And when they played that way, their games ended in a 3-3 tie. The point is that someone who's not quite as much a genius as someone else, when they have mathematical computing power at their aid, is able to think with the kind of power that a genius like Kasparov can think according to. So these three changes are three kind of things that will happen to the world, Kasparov is saying, as the world becomes populated by ever more affordable, smaller, and usable machines. Certain aspects of the game of chess that were human for a long time, right? That genius trumped less than genius, that age and wisdom had an advantage, and that boldness and surprise were useful, are disappearing. So one might say, was Kasparov then a pessimist? Does he think chess is becoming inhuman and machines? And the answer is no. He says that this actually is a great opportunity. We should take these machines and use them so that we don't have to worry about becoming masters of all the different possible moves that I spent my youth working on. We can have the machines do that raw calculation data for us, and we can be creative. We can be the creative people using the machines as a tool. And since not very many people were ever able to calculate with the intensity and speed of people like Kasparov, more of us, more humans will become creative and be able to use these machines to be creative in a way that people like Kasparov were. And so he sees this as quite an advantage. That's sort of an opening introduction to the question. I want to challenge Kasparov here. I want to, through Arendt, who I think is much more skeptical of what machines do to humanity than someone like Kasparov is, which is not to say she's anti-computer or anti-machine at all, or a Luddite, but she thinks that there's important questions about how machines are changing humanity that have to be asked. I want to then ask a question of how machines might be changing humanity and human creativity and human thinking.